A very good evening. You're watching the explosive weekend debate with me, Kritsween Walia. Ladies and gentlemen, a few days ago, the L&T Chairman SN Subrahmanyan advocated for 90-hour work weeks. To simply put it, what this meant was that if you were to clock 90 hours per week by working 6 days a week, you would have to pull off a 15-hour shift on each of the working days. And worse, 18 hours per day for 5 days if you were to enjoy your weekends. Though Mr. Subrahmanyan isn't a fan of weekend breathers either, as this is what he conveyed in the midst of the conversation that has now gone viral on social media. He said, and I quote, "I regret I'm not able to make you work on Sundays. To be honest, if I can make you work on Sundays, I will be more happy because I work on Sundays also," unquote. This sparked off a massive backlash on social media that collectively condemned the business tycoon's remarks as outdated and dismissive of work-life balance. Several also found his comment about staring at one's spouse sexist and reflective of an anti-family mindset. But even as netizens didn't blink twice before launching a no-holds-barred attack against the 90-hour proposal, more and more industry leaders and veterans are now breaking their silence. Viewers, do remember in the past, the likes of Infosys co-founder Narayan Murthy, Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk and some young entrepreneurs here in India like Ola CEO Bhavish Agarwal have all advocated for 70+ work hours a week. But now, ever since this fresh debate was sparked last week, a number of industry experts have spoken against the very idea of such a proposal, calling it counterproductive, archaic and regressive. Some in fact use this as an opportunity to say that it's quality over quantity, no matter which country or organization. Some even recalled their journey of unrealistic working hours at a former stage in their career and said it only led to mental stress and frequent hospital visits. So is the very idea that has been proposed once again by a privileged business leader sustainable or a classic recipe for burnout? Ladies and gentlemen, we also want your opinion on this, and so we've opened our call-in lines. Tell us what you think, because it's the collective workforce of this country and the people's opinion that really counts. The number is flashing on your screens. Until then, let's listen into how some of the great minds of the nation have taken this debate forward.
Ask me what's the quality of my work. Don't ask me how many hours I work. My wife is wonderful. I love staring at her. I spend more time.
देखिए, मुझे लगता है कि जो ये आवर्स का कॉन्सेप्ट है वो मेरे हिसाब से सही नहीं है. मुझे लगता है सही कॉन्सेप्ट जो है वो है कि क्या आप अपना दिल लगा रहे हैं कि नहीं लगा रहे हैं इस काम के पीछे.
Let's quickly open this up in the meanwhile with our experts joining us this evening on the explosive weekend debate. Gurcharan Das, author and former CEO of Procter & Gamble India, along with Kanish Gaur, CEO Deep Tech Startup. Very good evening to both you gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking out your time. It's Sunday and it couldn't be more ironic given the conversations that have gone wild on social media the last few days. Mr. Das, to you first. Tell us what you think. Let's begin with the basics. Do you think the hours you put in is directly proportional to your productivity?
No, I don't think it's a matter of hours. It's really what that young man said just now on your TV screen. It's about loving your work, that if you like what you do, then hours are not important. It is really you're living a life of purpose. And I think the truth is, the most tragic fact of this whole debate is not who is right. Both are wrong, both sides. The real fact is there was a study done in the UK which showed that 74% of the residents of UK, working people, hated their work. Now, most of us human beings spend a third of our lives or more working. And So what a waste of a life you can think about. So I think it's a responsibility of both sides. The employer has to, it's not to say, oh, I want you to work 90 hours. It's to make you want to come to work and make the work interesting. But it's also your own attitude that
Yeah.
is very important. You know, the same two different people will have exactly this wrong attitudes. That's why we often make the mistake of hiring people for skills and not for attitude,
Yes.
which is so very, very important. And it's the job of parents, teachers, early in life of a person to help them uncover what things they like to do, what things they don't like to do. And so I personally think it's a deeper problem
Yes.
of our commercial capitalist civilization that
And
we
while you're
are.
spot on, Mr. Das, one is also trying to figure out and ask the basic question, like I said, which is whether or not this figure in itself, 90 hours per week, even achievable or
Yeah,
realistic. But I'll come back to you and
I don't
Kanishk.
think he meant it.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Okay, you're being easy on him, all right. I'm afraid netizens don't feel so. But Kanishk, if I may, with your permission, can I quickly go across to our first caller who's just called in?
Sure, please.
Thank you so much. We have Swaminathan from Bengaluru dialing us this evening. Good evening to you, sir. Yes, what's your take on this?
See, good evening. It is such an irrational and insane statement. This means 15 hours per day you'll work. This looks like Subramaniam has come up the ladder not because of his merit, but only by staying beyond office hours to please his bosses, and that's why he has come up in life. And if a company has to make people work for 15 hours, that means they have potential to employ more people. In fact, if I was in government, I would say nobody should be allowed to work more than 8 hours. If you want to work more than 8 hours, then new people should be employed. This will also give rise to employment. That's my view.
Oh yes, 15 compared to 8 or 9 sounds rather brutal. But thank you, Swaminathan ji, for calling us this evening. Bala Chandran is calling us from Delhi. Good evening to you, sir.
I'm Meera Balachandran, lady, and
Oh,
I'd like
apologies,
to just
ma'am.
say
Yes,
that,
go ahead.
I would like to say it's not the time that is important as the quality of time that you spend. And when I say quality of time, it's not only quality of time in your office, your family is also very, very important. And if a person spends all his time in office and neglects his family, we are going to have horror stories in India. And I feel that we must balance things out, and a 40-hour schedule is what I think would be the best thing.
Glad you called, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Before I go across to other callers, and it indeed is a favorite topic given the number of callers dialing in this evening, Kanishk. To you, isn't ambition also a very personal aspect? So for someone who aspires to become a CEO, for instance, vis-a-vis someone, who doesn't want to reach that particular position in any given company or wants to give more time to his family, aim for a greater work-life balance, wouldn't it be unfair to measure the two or keep the two in the same position of demanding a 90 hour per week from them?
Christine, thank you for bringing me in this discussion. See, a lot of jobs require people to spend that kind of time because when they are building out the future, they do end up spending 14 to 15 hours. Then there are certain specific sectors which would require that kind of dedication. Let's look at if somebody who's launching satellites, taking example of Elon Musk. He, does spend that amount of time, and he's not just spending time with one person but multiple people. So people who are working with the top leadership, they might deny it's not fair, but a lot of people do end up spending that much amount of time when they have stricter deadlines. Let's look at our own prime minister. Look at his work schedule. He works 7 days a week and he gives at least 14
But
to
that's just
15
one
hours.
prime minister, Kanish. There's just one prime
There are
minister in the
multiple,
country.
see, it's people who lead organizations for the future. If the prime minister is leading us to Viksit Bharat, he gives that amount of dedication. So it is fueled by passion. But I want to add, it is not about quantitative. It is about how you prioritize your time. So how you spend the time, it's more of deep work. So at the same time, what is more required is deep work. When you're building deep tech startups, it's more about not spending social media time, but it is more
Okay.
about if you can spend more time, early hours of the day, and get more outcome. So it has to be more outcome oriented. That is what is required. So I think the chairman of L&T was giving a context for people to be more passionate about. We are taking him more out of context where he's said certain things in lighter spirit and try to explain, okay, what will you do sitting at home? So even if we work 40 hours, it's not that we disconnect. People still get connected mentally to business, where they are involved in terms of what business decisions are getting made. And today, CEOs of different companies don't switch off. Even if they're outside
Okay.
work, they are still taking calls. They are still mentally attentive to seeing their emails or responding to emails. So if you're leading an organization, it's very less time you get to switch off.
Okay,
You
very
are
interesting you
active
say
7
that.
days a week.
Very interesting you say that. A follow-up question to Mr. Das before I go across to other viewers calling us this evening. Appreciate your patience, viewers. But Mr. Das, do you think this is a generation gap issue? You know, for someone like Mr. Subrahmanyan to come out and say all this very conveniently and easily, you know, the manner in which he did, the average CEO of our nation, I believe, is somewhere around 55, 60. And the average employee would be somewhere around 28. Do you think that's the problem here?
Well, to some extent, it's a problem, but I think it's also a difference of privilege. If you've grown
Yeah.
up with a privilege and a comfortable home where you can count on coming back, you feel differently. But
Yeah.
if you're rising from below, from a poor family going into the middle class, then you're much more hungry and you need the job. So it's partly generational and partly the success of our reforms, which have made our economy grow fast and which has created companies which are doing well, this kind of startups that we heard about. I would just like to make one comment about the gentleman who called from Bangalore.
Yeah.
He talked about that there should be a rule, only 8 hours should be allowed, and then you have to hire somebody else. Now, on the face of it, it does make some kind of sense, but I think we should keep the government out of it. In other words, don't make any laws around this because that's a recipe for disaster. France did it. They enacted in the same spirit a 35-hour week because they thought more jobs would be created that way if everybody only worked 35 hours. What had happened was it killed the work ethic of Japan. The message that went to the people, to working people in Japan, is that you work as a kind of punishment so that you can have your free time, your holiday. And so that's why, the Japan people, the restaurants
Yeah.
like, anyway, that's another
Okay, so
issue.
you're saying you
But
should not
keep the
fix it
government
to a
out.
number, keep the government out, but also be okay with whoever wants to pitch in more hours
And one more.
while not mandating it.
Yeah, no, the thing is, I think one thing that happened, the COVID has taught
Yeah.
us all that a lot of work we can do from home. And this does create a different atmosphere where the children can see their father, even though
Yeah.
he's working, but they have access to the parents. And I think, and a lot of companies are using that now.
And this hunger for work-life balance also, so much of it, Mr. Das, is coming from the manner in which people have lost their loved ones to COVID and so many realizations kicking in following that. But stay on with us. We'll quickly take in a word from our callers as well. Prashantam calling us from Vellore. Good evening, Mr. Prashantam.
Good evening to you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm a consulting psychologist, and I have a couple of thoughts on this matter. Historically, when you see, when we were an agrarian society all over the world, there was a built-in work-life balance. They worked hard during the sowing time, reaping time, and in between they rested a lot as well. Now in the industrial era, time started becoming important, going by the clock. Nevertheless, the idea of work-life balance is very important. It's also important that there are studies that show that a lot of people go to work but actually don't produce much work. They are preoccupied with other things.
Right.
So motivating, helping, training, and coaching people to make the best of the time at work and be more productive. At the same time, balance their life. And on emergencies, be willing to do more and be given adequate compensation time to catch up with other things. So the key is balance, and work-life balance is important. There may be many patterns of achieving it.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful comments. We're going to take down some of those important ones. Going across to our next caller, Kirti, who's dialing us from Belgaum. Good evening, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Kirti Kulkarni from Belgaum, Karnataka. This is a very important discussion that's happening because I'm a mental health professional myself. And leading to this 70-hour work and 90-hour work is definitely not going to help the employees per se. There is something called as work-life balance. There is, and this is something about inversely proportional. So it's like the more you work, the productivity or the quality of work is definitely going to come down. So they need to understand that finally, why does a man work? It's only because so that he can have a good life with his family, a good time with his family. That's why he is earning. So, but this kind of a rule will definitely not help the working class people, and it's really going to be a detrimental on their minds. Thank you so much.
Okay, your suggestion is be more responsible while even coming out with these proposals, forget enacting them. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Going across to Sunil, who's calling us from Pune. Good evening, Mr. Sunil. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, hi. Good evening to all. I would like to just suggest that I do agree to the fact of what Mr. Gurcharan Das has mentioned. But also at the same time, I would like to mention is like L&T really need the HR of L&T really needs to introspect and retrospect their hiring procedure, because at the end of the day, if the chairperson of L&T has to come and say that you need working 90 hours, that means there's something wrong with their hiring process. So they need to get that thing right and get people who are on board, who are willing to give their time, the quality of time over quantity, as we've all mentioned about. And again, at the end of the day, we need to have strong labor laws. Like I'm from the Caribbean, where we are talking about the labor laws are very, very strict. And at the same time, if we have to get this here, believe me, the chairperson of L&T would have to step down very quickly on this one. So this is something said that being a democratic country, yes, we have the right to speak. We have the opinion. But at the same time, we need to be logical with what we are talking. We just can't go around hampering and just go around saying anything that we want to. So I would suggest is like, yes, we need to have that kind of passion for our work and take it from there. So.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. Before I go across to Vishant, who's calling us from Goa, quick word from Kanishk as well, who's been waiting patiently. Kanishk, what do you make of that? You know, a lot of viewers of the opinion that this may take a hard toll on mental health, and that's been opined by a very famous actor as well, who was quick to take to social media and talk about how easy, you know, people who come from a place of privilege, how easily can they pass off these comments or demand this from their employees, but the implementation needs a lot of other factors that need to be kept in mind, and so a responsible comment would have made sense here.
Christine, one important point is when we are talking about a 90-hour work week, it should not be imposed on the workforce. There has to be an element of consent. If the CEO wants to work 90 hours, he imposes on himself. And if he wants to bring out this business idea, then please take consent of the other leadership. Are they willing to go up to the 90-hour milestone? That's there. No, this is like running a marathon. So as a CEO of a startup, big tech startup, while I might end up doing 84 to 90 hours, but I don't push my team that they should equally contribute and start spending 90 hours at the office. It's for people who are at the leadership role. They want to build this out. They want to impose it. Please impose it on yourself first and see how long you can continue doing this. After that, only one should talk about this option of exploring with the top leadership. And let's look at, there is that part of the labor workforce in this country which still ends up doing 90 hours. Look at the people who are doing guarding. Look at the police, which is safeguarding us across this country, people working on national security, people working across the borders of this country, I'm telling you, they work 84 to 90 hours
Oh
to
yes,
keep us
absolutely,
safe.
without doubt. But that comes from a place of choice. Though I do
Absolutely,
feel,
that's what I mean.
though I do
Saying it
feel,
has to come
Mr.
from
Das,
place
and
of
you can
choice.
quickly, comment for 30
Absolutely.
seconds before I go across to other callers. The Gen Z, or the next generation, is also rather spoiled for its choices, don't you think? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time that, in our former years into the career, we were given a choice to sign up for as many hours and we were happy to take it
Yeah.
that way. But I don't think we're living in those times anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right,
Yeah.
and a lot of the callers are absolutely right. But the Kirti from Belgaum made a comment. She said that we work in order to have our we work because we want something else from our job. What I'm saying is we should work for the sake of the work. We must enjoy the work. That is the mistake that everybody
But not
makes.
everyone has that choice also,
Well,
Mr.
yes,
Das.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
But let's at least aspire. Let's at least aspire that we give opportunities and young people, because today the Gen Z is a very good time that they are take risks, that Gen Z generation. And
Yes.
what they're telling us is that we want to be passionate
Yes.
about our work.
Yes.
Work should not be a punishment. Work should be
Oh yes, and
something
in that sense,
joy.
they certainly are, giving us lessons which we also should take back home. So, well, one can only hope for a better future and a better working environment as a country going forward. Thank you, Kanishk and Mr. Das, for sharing your insightful thoughts with us. Appreciate you joining us this evening. That's all the time we have. That's all the views we could take in, callers. But thank you for dialing in. We head into a very short break with that. Lots more lined up when we return. Don't go anywhere.